But our next presentation, if you want to go ahead and, I don't know how everyone wants to present their stuff, but our next presentation is Embracing a Culture of Change. Valerie Addonizio from Atlas Systems is going to be your presenter. Think back to your workflows before you adopted ArchivesSpace. How often did they change? This lightning round is a prompt to celebrate and embrace the fact that the ArchivesSpace team works hard to deliver multiple releases a year, but that the pace of that development process requires us to anticipate, plan, and adopt changes faster than ever before. This session will have some tips and tricks to think about for adopting a culture of change around plugins, staff training, and routines as they relate to ongoing releases. Thanks, Valerie.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for the introduction, Jessica. So I read off my slides. We'll see how this goes. So think back to your workflows before you adopted ArchivesSpace. Really, think back to them. Those halcyon days where nothing ever changed. I bet that most of those workflows were relatively stable for long periods. If you used Archon, AT, or the EAD cookbook, those applications and practices stayed the same for a long time, whole careers worth of time. You may have established and invested in a decade plus of practice that was comfortable and predictable, and so did the people around you. But ArchivesSpace has changed, will change, and will always change. But and frequently, 3.3.3 release candidate is available right now. You might miss that comfortable old groove, or you may still be in one, and I am here to force you out of it with reality. Changes to ASpace can be both technical as well as functional. By functional, I mean a new feature, like top container merging, or the spreadsheet importer, or new support for EAC, or a new subrecord. These are all callbacks to the last few major releases. These have impacts on staff or student training. I loved that gorgeous guide that Susanna showed us, but what happens when she has to go back and update that? By technical, I mean changes to the code you cannot see, including how pages render, configurations removed or added, and deeper infrastructure changes an average user will never detect until something changes and it goes wrong for you. These have impacts on plugins, theming, and sometimes come with decisions, like what are we setting this configuration to, true or false? Frequent version releases means changes in both of these categories, the functional and the technical. This presentation is a series of prompts, followed by suggestions for your consideration. I will be encouraging you to accept a culture of change. Sorry. Actively prepare for that change. And identify what you wish to improve about your update workflow if you have one. So let's talk about your update landscape. As it is right now, let's start with the basics. How do you hear about updates? Do you usually hear about them before a release or after? Who makes the decision to update and when? Is there one person in your workplace that makes that call? Is it you? Is it a group of people who says, yes, it's time to move on to another version? Or does that decision get made for you by your service provider or IT person? That person sends you an email, new release is out, we're updating. How often do you update? Do you do that with every new version? Or when you hear about a new cool thing, any accessioning archivists in the room, pay attention to 3.3.0. Do you feel prepared for updates when they occur? Red text is scary. Do you track changes to ArchivesSpace and whether those changes will impact your workflows? Do you do that proactively or reactively? Do staff meet to discuss or coordinate forthcoming updates and changes to workflows? Do you schedule retraining or new training when updates come out? Again, proactively or reactively. A staff member comes to you and says, hey, there's this new button, how am I supposed to use it? Did you know that new button was on the way? Now you have to reactively go back and train staff. Has anything ever broken for you during an update? Did it cause significant disruption? All of a sudden you can't load ArchivesSpace anymore because your PUI will not let ArchivesSpace run. You are now down. Do you know there's an AS roadmap? And the keyword search terms for that would be ArchivesSpace roadmap. And of course, everyone reads the release notes multiple times in detail for every version, right? So let's talk about your ASpace landscape. Do you know what version you're on? Quick. Who knows what version they're on? Raise your hands. Up, up. Hesitance. Okay, good. Is that the most recent version? People who raised your hands. Yes. Confident yeses. Some maybe no's. Do you have a sandbox? And I don't mean the sandbox, which is available at the sandbox.archivespace.org. I mean one with your actual data in it and your actual configurations. This is what I call a true sandbox, where you're looking at your stuff, not whatever happens to be online. Do you know what plugins and theming you have installed? Do you test your plugins after each update? Loving these answers from the back corner. Do you remove plugins when plugins get folded into code? Do you even know what that sentence means? Do you know what configurations you have in place? Do you test your configurations? And do you have a custom PDF style sheet? Thank you to Susanna for mentioning that. Oh, I hope that's your name, Susanna. I think it is. So here are my suggestions after prompting you with uncomfortable questions for the first half of the presentation. Were you happy with your answers? Did you have them? Was there any frustration there? The first piece of advice is to go back and answer those questions and identify which questions you wish you had better answers to, not do, and which don't matter. Sometimes, maybe not all of those things matter, and that's okay. Maybe you don't have a lot of plugins, you can skip completely over that section. And now here comes way too many suggestions after way too many questions. Suggestion, oops. Consider a sandbox if you don't have one already. I would never live without one, and this is my first suggestion. But make sure that sandbox is a real mirror. Same plugins, same configurations, same plugins, same everything. How do you get one? This question would be directed to whoever manages your current instance of ArchivesSpace. If you have a hosting provider, they likely offer one. And do you know about test.archivespace.org? So this is a different kind of a sandbox. This is where new code is available at all times. So if you do not have a sandbox and you have no ability to bring up a new version yourself, you can preview changes that are coming down the pike by going to test.archivespace.org. Consider testing release candidates if you don't do this already. More work for you, but this is a presentation about updates. Only do this on a sandbox if you have one, or on a local dev install if you have one. This benefits everyone. The earlier problems are known, the better. Testing release candidates with real data is seriously helpful to the community, and testing RCs gives you a vital preview of any issues with plugins, branding, or the need for training ahead of a formal release. It extends your timeline by at least 2 weeks to get yourself ready for that new release. As long as you test it thoroughly. Just installing a release candidate and seeing if it loads, yes, that is a reason for celebration, but are you really testing it? Read the release notes. You might not understand everything that's there, and that is fine. Release notes can be a little intimidating because what is a PR and what are all of these configurations? Read it anyway. Please read them. See the community at work by reading about community contributors, and pull requests. Tip your cap to the program team, devs, councils, and core committers, all of whom are putting work into the changes behind those release notes. Use the release notes to celebrate windfalls or improved workflows by knowing the details of every release, but also anticipate concerns or complications by reading about new requirements, new configurations, and everything I'm mentioning today. Maintain an update checklist of steps to take when preparing for and assessing an update. Assign or share responsibility for the checklist. I get to say that because I don't work where you work. Embrace the fact that this will repeat, and it will repeat often, 2 to 3 times a year, maybe even 4. And if I were making a checklist, it might look like these next few slides. Maintain and check a list of plugins and their behavior. List every plugin on your production server and your sandbox. Just starting with that is a good activity. Do you know every, oops, I went ahead, but do you know every plugin on every server? You will again get this list from your hosting provider or IT person. Check each plugin's source page for version and compatibility information if available. So not only do you have to anticipate the updates to ArchivesSpace core code. You are running a series of plugins that may also be either out of sync or have new versions available, and you have to be responsible for knowing what version of a plugin you are running as well, and whether it is compatible with the current version of ArchivesSpace or the version that you're anticipating. So sometimes update activities are both about updating ArchivesSpace, but also going back to your pages for every single plugin and updating the plugin as well. Or the plugin development is slightly behind ArchivesSpace's development. You want to move forward to the next version, but your plugin isn't ready yet. Determine what each of those plugins do. So you have your list, but what do they do? Now, after years of use and onboarding, staff might not realize the differences in functionality of core code versus plugins. And I have had this service request. ArchivesSpace, it's broken, it's not doing this thing. Also, I'm a new employee. And I'm like, oh, your old institution had 6 awesome plugins installed, none of which are installed on your new thing. But you think ArchivesSpace is broken because you don't know that all of the functionality that you were benefiting from in the past was a plugin. Not her fault. But what do you do? Do you know what your plugins do? For example, after years of using TimeWalk, you would be rudely surprised to learn that ArchivesSpace does not automatically parse states. But would you notice if it stopped working? You'd notice if ArchivesSpace won't load, but would you really notice if one of your plugins stopped working? Determine how to test each of the plugins on your list. So what's a quick way to know that your plugin still works the way you expect? Most plugins will come from the community, but some may have been developed in-house, and in-house plugins are usually related to branding and theming. These are at risk when the code behind pages change, especially to the PUI. This is usually for good reasons. That code is changing for good reasons, like improving accessibility or new feature requests. But if you have in-house plugins, where does that code live? Who wrote that code? Do they still work where you work? Do they read the release notes? And here it is a real example. This is a snippet from the release notes from version 2.8.0, and I know that's a while ago, but this was a perfect example. Look at the text at the bottom. You may need to update any plugins to override these files. Someone who wrote a plugin who used these files is going to look at that, know immediately. Do you know immediately? Maintain and check a list of vital workflows. For example, do you export as part of your workflows? Maybe to MARC or EAD, maybe to EAC. Surely those standards won't change, right? They're standards. The next presentation proves this isn't true. Thank you, Kevin. Importers and exporters change. Unless you're confident that you know every single change in code, test every single aspect of your workflows. This means testing whatever your staff are dependent on, even exports. Check in on preferences and permissions. New features sometimes come with new permission options. Revisit your permissions and users after updates or on a semi-annual basis. This isn't going to kill you, but if you have a new feature and your staff can't use it because of permissions, then, you know. So I say a semi-annual basis. I used to have a calendar set for this. I would check on my permissions and things every 4 months. The new agents module and custom reporting are both examples of when the permissions menus changed as a result of new features being added. Updates also bring changes to the preferences menu itself, including 330. Abrupt ending, because I wasn't sure how the timing was going to go. And remember, without change, we wouldn't get to see kittens turn into cranky old cats. I love cranky old cats. They get arthritic and cranky. They need special food. I have time for questions, I assume? Okay. Or I could give you back time in your day.
Thank you, Valerie. I don't know if we were just encouraged or fussed at, but I really appreciate it. It's always great. Valerie always has a really engaging and educational presentation. And now we know she likes cranky cats that require medicated food. Old dogs are better than puppies. Aww. Yeah. But do we have any questions unrelated to pets? Okay. Oh, all right, cool. Right, yeah, they feel good about themselves right now.
So I was curious if there's a place where folks are sharing their testing criteria or testing sort of checklists, because that would be very useful to add.
I'm going to make a note to send this to Jessica afterwards. The testing, I'm going to close my eyes because I'm not sure about this. I believe that the testing subgroup of the Technical Advisory Council, or a shared group of the Technical Advisory and User Advisory Councils, has a testing checklist that they use to run through checks that I'm sure is publicly available. All I have to do is go and find that link. So I'm going to make a note of that right now, and I'll put this in my comments for Jessica to put on the wiki.
Yeah, they do have an extensive testing protocol. I don't know if it's publicly available or not, so that's the one.
Yeah,
You will check, yeah.
Just to follow up on that, yes, the testing sub-team is publicly available. It's on the wiki. Also, at the last online forum, Joshua Shaw and I of the testing sub-team talked a little bit about that testing process, and he and I actually also talked about how we do testing locally at Dartmouth and NYU. At NYU, we have our testing workflow up on our LibGuide, and I can share that with you too if you want to come find me. So.
Awesome, thanks. Yeah, and a recording of that presentation that Rachel just mentioned from the online forum is available online. Any other questions? All right, thank you, Valerie. All right.